Life, as we find it, is too hard for us. It brings us too many pains, disappointments, and impossible tasks. There's three ways most likely people run away from it. Powerful deflection, which causes us to make light of our misery. So the type of person that would be basically cynic, right? That's whatever, everything is the same, like joke. Substitute satisfaction, which diminishes it, and intoxicating substances, and it don't need an explanation for obvious reasons. Now let's move on. Deflection is very interesting thing, and he mentions the books like Voltaire's Candide, and he says that Voltaire has deflection in mind when he ends Candide with the advice to cultivate one's garden, and which is something to have in your mind, basically. He says that, which also interesting stuff, right? Intoxicating substances influence our body and alter its chemistry. And, intoxicating substances can be anything, right? It can be very heavy drugs as well, or alcohol, very innermost thing. Everything can be mentioned. Which, like drugs, for example, which has a specific effect on a human being, influence our body and alters its chemistry. Oftentimes human beings love to ask this question that, hey, what is the purpose of our life? Like, what's your purpose? And if you were to hear something, the purpose is that, there is just no purpose. The world is colorless, and you just give colors a name, and etc. And if you were to look at this perspective, not many people want to hear it or understand it or side with it. Like, how can there be no bloody purpose? We may be, or the answer may be that we are just lab animals of some sort of higher civilization, and they are just using us as their observing material, and that's our purpose, to fulfill their wishes or whatever. But not many people ask that, let's say, because humans like say that, serving the God, Lord, or whatever, bring this stuff, and humans are egoistic, obviously, and we all the time ask, what is our purpose? What's the purpose of life? And by the purpose of life, we mean what is our purpose in life. We don't really care what's the purpose of life, right? We care our purpose in this life. But nobody asks, what's the purpose of animals? I don't know, do you? We don't even know what's our purpose, what's the purpose of life, right? Nobody thinks about this thing, right? Which is kind of thing to have in your mind. What's the purpose of animals? Satisfaction is obtained from illusions. We can say that people that are delusional are one of the most satisfied people, and maybe happy as well, because the man of action will never give up the external world on which he can try out his strength. Great quote to have in your mind. The man of action will never give up the external world on which he can try out his strength. The very interesting note about the religion. Religion, basically, its technique consists in depressing the value of life and distorting the picture of the real world in a delusional manner, which presupposes an intimidation of intelligence. And first, when I read this, I stopped and I started to think about this material here. And later, when the Freud starts to talk about the aspect of the guilt, this kind of made an additional point in my mind that, the religion, one of the powerful things religion uses all the time is guilt. And it's presuppose, it intimidates the intelligence, because it's like, say, for religion, of course, we need to be specific which religion. So I'm assuming that we talk about Christianity right now. Like, for Christianity, for example, it's how can you say? What Christianity has done. If you were to study the history of church, if you were to see it, right? For Christianity, in fact, the creator of this, the ruler of this planet right now is Satan. That's why many religious people start these conspiracy theories, and they're like, and there is somewhere this Satan sitting in the office and gives bunch of commands to these people, to these X, Y, and Z. This is the Christian ideology. For Christianity, the creator of the world, the ruler of the world is Satan. The ruler of this world is Satan, basically. And that's for Christianity. And here's where guilt and the sin, like guilt and sin, are like a religion. The basically primal human aspect is the feeling of guilt, which came from different things, maybe because our primal era, right? And religion calls guilt a sin in our human aspect. So religion uses this sin all the time. That's why you will see these holy people, right? They are like, oh, I'm sinner, because that person is fighting his own natural instincts, right? Natural instincts to be with women, for example. For saints, like to have sex, to have this kind of relationship, is already sins, unholy action. Actually, that's how it is. And these type of people that reject this type of they're rewarded. So it gives the illusional view of the world, and it's like blah blah. Like there is no point in living. It's distorted the picture of the real world in many ways. In many ways, and Nietzsche talks about, for example, this mentions this type, for example, in Antichrist, and book wrote an entire book about these topics. Books, in fact. Things that, for example, this promise of eternity, right? We know that there is nothing eternal. We say that we have this spirit, and this spirit is eternal. We don't know. Nobody knows. Well, maybe someone knows, but I mean, human understanding of we humans have no idea, because you're gonna die or gone. But where are you going, or what's happening? You just don't know. So we talked more than enough about this topic. Now let's get back to the Homo homini lupus, right? Which means Latin, which means in English, man is wolf to man. Again, our primal instincts. We are savages as a man. We are humans. We are animals. We are beasts. We fight each other to death. We kill each other. We start war against each other. There has never been the case like the entire nation stood up against other animals, other species. We are the only species that have this mass scale of destruction within each other. Genocides. How many genocides happen? Like he mentioned, you can see Mongols. What are Mongols doing? You can see multiple times genocides of Jews for religious reasons. Like it's not like the genocide of Jews first happened in World War II, or genocide of people. Generally, war is hell. There's this saying, war is hell. Every war, every soldier just rapes people, just killing, raping. Germans invaded Russia, they've raped Russian women. Russians invaded, or Soviets, in fact, not Russians, but Soviets. Soviets invaded Germany, they raped, and every Allied forces invaded Germany, they raped German women. And Germans are basically killing and destruction. This is what men is wolf to men. The killing for religious respect, like I'm in this religion, you're in this religion, okay, you must die then, because, well, I'm in this religion, then you must definitely be dead, right? Or deserve to die. That's why I say this killing and stuff. So, man is wolf to wolf, man is wolf to men. And if you were to see what's going on, it's an endless process. It has always been like that. This is what it is. This is just eternal cycle of. There is certain aspects we don't know why we are like that, but it's for sure that we don't see same type of behavior in other animals. When I was, thinking about this, also there's many aspects we don't know. First of all, why? It's very interesting. Why are we as human beings are the only ones on the planet within so many species that exist on this planet right now? Why are we the only ones who obtain the intelligence, and why the others, animal beings, did not? Why is that? That's a question also came in my mind. That's a very tough question as well. Instinctual passions are stronger than reasonable interests. Something to in your mind. What moves their world? Hunger and love are what moves the world. Most people like to say love, and no. Hunger and love are what moves the world. We can say that hunger. One of the complicated stuff of religion, for example, what I didn't mention when I was talking about that quote, is that religion is like. It's, by the way, this concept is not from Christianity, but Christianity likes to take its own. It's important to mention, like you love not expectation, love thy neighbor as you love thyself, right? But this makes no sense. Like, you can't just love something for no reason. But at the same time, now the religion comes and says, so you don't love your enemy, right? And here we can say, credo quia absurdum. I believe because it is absurd. And then what's this? They are basically the quote below. The man that actually said this wanted to say that I certainly know that it is absurd, but then there was like, I believe because it is absurd, which is funny at the same time. Check it out, the history behind this quote, and you will find it hilarious. Hilarious are kind of funny, right? Because which means that, like, how many people religion has burned? How many? And today, because that's out of this conversation right now, but how many people have been burned? How many women, men, burned? First, how many women were burned in the name of witch? You witch! Burn that witch! That witch cured some incurable diseases. Must be the rule of Satan, sir. Do you remember that for Christians, the great ruler of this planet is Satan, right? Technology, etc. Like, bad thing. Also, everything basically comes out of sexuality right now. That's the way, like, no, for the reason why people dislike civilization is because, well, they think that's, first of all, this technology takes away from them the happiness, and at the same time it takes time and energy from their sexuality, basically, because they have to use that energy in other things right now to do have relationships with other things and this business enterprise and stuff like that. So I want to say that how many people have been burned. Person says, well, I don't think that there's this threat, or you are rejecting the divine order which is mentioned in Bible page whatever. Okay, time to be burned. This is why this quote is kind of funny, because there is a lot of trust in it, as if the person could sit up and be like, this is utter absurd, not a smart thing to say, and you should not. So rather than saying that, you can say, and we can say that I believe because it's an absurd, which means it is certainly an absurd. It's something interesting to have in your mind. Your sense of guilt comes from suppressed aggressiveness, and the idea of the guilt. To the earth, this very earth you brings us to guilt. Let us needless go. Then leaves repentance, fears to wring us. A moment's guilt, an age of war. And this is the power of guilt. People, basically, guilt is such a huge. The guilt has such an enormous power. The guilt is such an enormous problem, such an enormous power. We may be right now feeling unconscious guilt, which is a whole nother level of conversation when we don't really much know about it. But the power of guilt, for example, how it comes right now, I want to talk to you about this right now. How this guilt thing comes. For example, one of the examples he brings is that in primal era, men used to kill their fathers, basically, and after that they would feel guilt. And this guilt was then made as a law and right thing to, basically, the right thing to not to kill your father, and law is to not to kill your father, right? I mean, in the Ten Commandments, right, there is thing to don't sleep with your father's woman or something like that in commandments, right? I believe, if I remember correctly. I mean, there's this, and don't steal and don't do that type of stuff. I mean, we are as animals, we are predators. We are very powerful, but we are. I mean, that's why I believe that Freud has this saying of. Let me find it. I have it in my own notebook. These quotes. I believe that's why one of the reasons Freud said that before you diagnose yourself, it's a very famous saying, but I don't remember exactly. But I know the like before you diagnose yourself with depression or low self-esteem, first make sure that you are not in fact just surrounded by an assault. And like, after reading like this book, like you see that we are very primal beings. We are not really this advanced culture. So we are not really, as a whole, as a human beings, smart. In fact, our innate desire to destroy and crush each other poses insane amount of threat to survival of our civilization. I mean, like right now, what we're talking about is like destruction of the entire planet, basically. Because now most supernations have these nuclear weapons, right? I mean, and wars, and everybody knows that at some point war is inevitable if things don't change. Like these things pose like huge because danger, and this is somehow connected with this primal era of ours, which comes, and it don't went anywhere. It still controls us. It's within us. And each poses huge danger, by the way, it's huge danger. But how to deal with this, I have no idea. Neither so I'm sure quite sure he would mention it if he knew. Like it poses humongous danger. And let's don't skip over from the conversation, but what I was saying, guilt is something very powerful. This is the way of manipulating, like this, like about the guilt, right? And when the thought brings same amount of guilt just as an action. Let's say you, as a primal being, like you kill in primal era, like the primal animal, kill their father, you feel guilt. Like even thinking about something that is not acceptable until like not something right, not something for our animal mind, animal being. It brings the desire of the guilt, not desire but feeling of guilt. And what's the difference there? Right now, that's a very interesting question to have in mind. Like, why is when the thought about doing certain things brings guilt? Why is that? And what's this guilt like? It's a huge problem. Like, guilt is no joke. It's like huge value. And man's judgment of value follows directly his wishes for happiness. That accordingly they are an attempt to support his illusions with arguments. Like basically we always judge our value directly with like how far, like it brings far away us from happiness or brings toward happiness, right? In fact, and at the end I would say like if you look at it, for us human primate brains, like there's three things in our brain. There's like for human animals, not what is happiness basically. Sex brings us happiness, the feeling of happiness, like having sex, and the thing, right? Because everything comes down to sex at the end of the day. Sex is, but rather than that, like rather than having sex, which not even happiness, right? The sex brings us feeling of momentary pleasure. But not like happiness. Like happiness is something for us unknown for human mind, because our mind is designed to make us survive. Basically, our brain is a survival machine. We need water and we need food and we need sleep. That's all. Like water, food, basically, and sleep. There is three things: survival, feeding, and sex. We can say survival, sex, feeding, and stuff. Like basically, these is important things. And rather than that, like we have no idea, because this is how we lived. But also this creation of tribes, which then grew into even more bigger tribes, and after that nations, and after nations, like this super, like having billions of and tens of millions of people in a nation. Like it's very crazy stuff. And I was also thinking how Freud would be surprised and how he would put this book if he experienced the existence of internet, because like the creation of internet, which is a huge discovery, it's just same value as the discovery of fire, right? Changed so many things, I mean, these aspects of civilization, discontents, and accelerated some processes, made it even faster, and like changed so many things. And I was thinking, whoa, how he would write these things. And yeah, this the end. There is no question that I like this book. Amazing book. The book definitely worth reading. I hope you felt my genuine interest in this book. And hit the like button if you have not already. And yeah, see you. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't.